Okay, I'll quickly start by showing you guys how to set up one mercenary dashboard. What we can see here is the right-hand side of a mercenary dashboard, which is more of the offensive side of the equation. And on the left side of the dashboard is the defensive side of the equation. To build your mercenary dashboard, we need to take a look at your mercenary's card. Here is Hjalborn, or Hallborn, who is a Viking-esque warrior. We can see that he specializes in might as a primary attribute, and his benefits are that he can equip heavy armor, which means he can also benefit from any of the lower tier armors, light or medium. He operates on a power source called Fury, and every mercenary has a different type of power, which is thematic, and they all operate differently. I'll get into that. He also has two unique perks to him. One is +1 to combat reroll, allowing him to reroll an undesired dice during any of his activations, and also a free action that is to weapon switch from one of your weapon loadouts. And he also is granted Overpower +1. Flipping the card over, we see his starting basic statistics. So let's go ahead and load these into his dashboard. Starting from left to right, we have his might of 5, which we will place there. We have his agility of 4, so we'll slot that in there. We have his wit of 3, which we will slot there. And we have his faith of 3, which we will slot there. And we have his luck of 4, which we will slot there. Flipping Hallbjorn's card back over, we see that we need to fill his max health. All mercenaries have a starting health of 10, and we calculate the rest with the equation 5 times their might proficiency. In his case, that's 5. 5 times 5 is 25, plus 10 is 35. So we'll slot that into his max health. Next up, we see that we need to fill his speed, which is the amount of orthogonal movement Hallbjorn can achieve on the map, which is calculated using his agility and a base stat of 3. So 3 plus his ability proficiency in agility of +2 makes a speed of 5. Next, we need to fill in his gambit. Gambit is a once per scenario ability to make an extra movement with your mercenary between rounds, and in this case it's calculated using the mercenary's ability proficiency in wit, which we see as +2, giving him a gambit of 2. Next, we need to fill his resilience, which is based off of his faith. Resilience is the ability of a mercenary to avoid debuffs from enemy attacks or other sources, and in this case it is 10 minus your ability proficiency in faith, so that makes 8. Similarly, cheat death is calculated in the same way with 10 minus your ability proficiency in luck, which also makes 8. In this case, these are both D10 rolls. From Hallbjorn's portrait card, we see that he has combat reroll +1 and overpower +1, which we will slot in on the right. Overpower +1 allows Hallbjorn to add 1 true damage at the end of his attack roll calculation that ignores the enemy armor, and combat reroll allows him to reroll 1 die per activation. First, we have Hallbjorn's runed battle hammer, which is his main hand weapon. We see that it has a range of 1, an accuracy of hitting on 7 plus on a D10, and has 2 damage. It has an optional ability where you can drop your attack rate by -1, meaning 1 less die roll during the attack, but you benefit from having overpower +3 for that attack, which is 3 true damage. In his offhand, he has the blacksmith's hammer, which augments the main hand weapon by adding +4 knockback to all melee attacks when he is dual wielding. Halbjorn also has a wooden shield which adds 1 to protection. That is a permanent benefit as long as he has that equipped. You will see that all other mercenaries only have 1 protection. He also has rations which we will equip in the accessory slot, and due to his free action of weapon switch, Halbjorn can switch out his offhand weapons for free to take a more defensive or offensive role depending on the situation on the board. Slotting in his offensive stats, we see that he has an attack rate of 3, allowing him to roll 3 die during an attack, an accuracy of 7+, so he hits on a 7+, and for every hit he'll do 2 damage before taking in account to enemy defense. Next we'll slot in his skill card, which shows Unbridled Fury, Whirlwind, and Battle Shout. These are some of the skill actions that he can perform, as well as move actions and attack. Every mercenary starts with a piece of body armor, which goes on the body slot. Every mercenary has a base protection of 1, but due to Halbjorn's shield, he has a base protection of 2 at this time, as long as he keeps it equipped. If he were to be targeted with an attack that struck his body, he would have an additional 2 protection from that chest plate. We know he has max health of 35, so we drop that in. His power is based on Fury, and we see on the top line of his card there that he starts with a Fury of 0, and Fury is gained by successfully hitting enemies in combat, and when he does that successfully, he gets +2 Fury. +2 would also be the base power regen level for Fury. Slotting that in, we see that he has a power regen of 2 and starts at 0. In comparison, Mary uses mana, and we see that she starts with a base mana of 2 at the beginning of the scenario, denoted by the blue cube in 2, and at the beginning of her activation gains +2 mana. So immediately upon activation, she would bump up to 4, and it is not dependent on striking an enemy like Fury. Finally, Seren, for example, uses Focus, which is a 3rd type of power, and we see that Seren starts with a base focus of 1 and gets +3 at the end of her activation. Pretending that Seren just finished an activation, we see that she gained 3 focus and is now at 4. However, for every successful strike an enemy lands on Seren before her next turn, her focus will drop by 1 for each hit, which is unlike the other forms of power. Mary has some additional statistics like Thorns 1, which is true damage that any adjacent enemy that strikes her would suffer at the end of their attack on her. She also has Evasion 1 and Evasion Chance 8+, which means on every attack heading in her direction, she has the opportunity to avoid 1 full hit of the player's choice if she successfully rolls an 8+ on a d10. Mary also has Spell Overpower 1, which is similar to Overpower, however, it is just pertaining to magical attacks. Next, let's look at our contracts, achievements, and inventory board. Achievements are goals you work towards during scenarios that are difficult to achieve but worth the effort, as they allow you to further specialize your mercenary, getting powerful abilities. Here we see a mage-specific achievement which would slot for Mary. It needs to have 2 successful attempts during scenarios in which you hit 3+ enemies with a single attack. If you can accomplish that, you unlock the specialization called Fire Blast Expert. On critical roll, also deal the critical damage as true damage to an adjacent enemy, giving you that extra punch. Every time you successfully do that during a scenario, you mark the progress meter up by 1 until you hit the goal of 2. Here we have a warrior-based achievement called Displacement Expert. It requires 6 successful attempts to slam an enemy. Once achieved, on critical roll, you may knock back your target one field left or right. This knockback is used before any other knockback, allowing you to perhaps position enemies favorably or knock them into terrain that will add additional damage. Deathblow Expert would be for Seren 4 attempts to perform the last hit on an enemy. If you do that, you gain Precision, which is a buff. And Restoration Expert would be for our Cleric, the Glass Cannon Healer, known as Maeve. If you successfully do this 6 times, i.e. healing another ally, you now, on critical hit, you may convert critical damage to healing an ally within a range of 6. For contracts, the first contract we have is Goblin Heads. You need to obtain 15 Goblin Heads, which is from killing grunts. For every 5 heads, you are rewarded with a random silver rune, which you can use to upgrade your gear. And for every 3 heads, you get a random bronze rune. Those goals I just mentioned were for individual mercenaries collecting heads. As a group, however, when you achieve this contract, the group shall receive 1 random gold rune, which is a permanent rune, and 4 hope mood cards. Lost Ledgers is another contract, which in this particular scenario is time spent, perhaps dangerously, trying to get to corners of the board to dig up treasure. But if you can do that 3 times and turn this contract in, the group shall be rewarded with 5 gold coins and 4 hope mood cards. And at the end of that board is the inventory slot where your party can keep some of their surplus gear that's not being used on their boards. Next you see activation tokens. So once a mercenary has completed their turn, we place that by their mini to remember who has already gone. Then we have the Fate deck, which shows the activation order for grunts, mercenaries, and the boss, in this case Giggarat. We also have the Blood deck, and the Blood deck is where we target the enemy as well as they're targeting for us, so we know which area of their body we are striking. And finally we have the injury deck. If a mercenary is incapacitated, meaning their health goes to 0 and they are laid or proned on the board, they draw a injury, which inflicts a negative status. These can only be healed back in town. To the right we have various tokens, debuffs and buffs, green and red respectively, and we also see the dashboards for grunts or minions as well as the boss tracker on the far right. I have organized the grunts such that the goblin wreckers are on the far left, as they are tanks, and tanks activate before attackers, of which in this scenario there are none, and attackers activate before archers or ranged units. So in this case, with the goblin wrecker going first, in the turn order, we'll look at their card. We see they have a range of 1. They are a melee unit. They hit on a 5+ on a d10 roll. They get 2 die per attack, and they inflict 4 damage before any armor is taken into account for every successful hit. They have 15 health, have a movement of 6, and we see the various protection they have on different body slots. On a tactics, which is the enemy equivalent of a critical hit, we see that they also inflict knockdown. Here are the goblin wreckers, color-coded by their token matching their colored ring on their miniature. We also see their health tracker, and to the left, slots for any buffs or debuffs. Goblin stickers are up next, and their tracker is already organized. Let's take a look at their card. Goblin stickers we see have a range of 3, and they hit on a 6+. They roll 3 die when they attack, and for every successful hit inflict 4 damage before taking into account armor. They have 10 health, 5 speed or 5 movement, and then their protection for each body slot. On a successful tactics, they inflict bleed. Next, let's take a look at Giggarat the Unhinged. He has a range of 5. There is a misprint on this card. He actually hits on a 5+. He rolls 4 combat die during an attack, and for each successful hit inflicts 4 damage. He has a base health of 30, a speed of 6, and the various armors denoted below, or protection levels. On successful tactics, he inflicts poison. From left to right at the top of Giggarat's boss board, we see that there is a misprint. It should be range 5 in that first slot, not max health of 30. Max health is denoted by the acrylic cubes to the right. Next to where his health is currently listed as a token, we see his attack rate of 4 die. He hits on 5+, and 4 damage for every successful hit. To the left of his boss card, we see the enrage tracker. At the end of every round, this goes up by 1. Should he hit an enrage level of 6 or a tracker of 6, he will successfully enrage, and the scenario will get much more challenging. To the right, there's a card. This is a heirloom card. Let's take a look at that. Heirlooms are rare pieces of loot that are difficult to obtain, but should you go for it, it is worth the effort. Here, these are randomly dealt and allotted to bosses, so you never know what you're going to get. In this case, it gives Giggarat the benefit that any crit chance against him is only successful on a 10 on the D10. However, should we kill the leader with a critical attack, then we obtain this as a group, and we can use it in following scenarios with crit chance +2 for whichever character is carrying that, and we can discard it at the end of battle. Here we are all set up, and I have chosen to put Halbjorn and Maeve on the same side together, and Seren and Mary on the opposite side of the board. There is various terrain, as you can see, some of which obstructs line of sight, some of which has perches that are available should you have the speed to climb to them or fly to them, and being at a higher elevation does give you the benefit of increasing your range with ranged attacks. Around the board are also some of the contract locations for the Lost Ledger. These are these tokens that, should you stand beside them, it is a free action to attempt to dig them up. And you would then roll a d10, and if successful, you obtain the loot on a 5+ on the roll. At the end of the scenario, you would still get to roll for these, but you would only be successful on a 10+. We see that the grunts are scattered in the middle with Giggarat next to them. Let's go ahead and get started then with the main quest, titled Bloodwork in the Danemark. We reached Westarch just before dusk, laying anchor a safe distance from its port and using rowboats the rest of the way. The town was in no condition to entertain guests. Its docks were a ruined mess of scorched driftwood and sunken merchant ships. Someone didn't want any new residents, or was hell-bent on keeping the old ones from leaving. We hid our rowboats as best we could and prepared for reconnaissance of the port and beyond. We were hired by the son of the local blacksmith, a stout lad whose sturdy frame was no match for the affliction he picked up on his way to Ternag. "Westarch is in peril," was all he would mutter after we took his gold and the fever took him. The boy made no mention of the state of his home before he died, only that we were to find his father and prepare defenses for what they feared would come. What had already come, by the looks of it. These were Marquis Aurore's lands, the dame of the Danemark, but she and her men were nowhere to be found, and Westarch's cries for aid had gone unanswered. Dead client or no, the code of the guild is quite clear. We accepted the coin, so we will do the work, lest the next contract paid be the one for our heads. Continue to 1-1. 1-1 is Giggarat the Unhinged. Here's the introduction to the scenario. We followed smoke in the sky to a campfire in what was likely once the town square. A small group of goblins huddled around the flickering flames, laughing and enjoying a bit of meat, and, by the sounds of it, more than a little bit of ale. There was no sign of the blacksmith, or any townsfolk for that matter. We decided a direct assault against the drunken gobs would work well enough. That's when we were spotted by their leader, who we had mistaken for a hanging corpse. He was a goblin on stilts, but unlike any stilts we had ever seen, His bow was already drawn as he stared us down, his face twitching while he shared with us a wicked grin. He had a touched look in his eyes, wide and unblinking, like a man on his deathbed, desperately trying not to fall asleep. "Look what we got here, boys," the mad goblin cackled. "Fresh meat for the fire." That brings us to the beginning of the scenario, so let's draw our first fate card and see the turn order. We have Goblin Sticker. In this case, we see at the top of the card that Giggarat, the boss, gets to go first, as we see that there's the faded skull symbol here denoting that boss gets to go first. This portrait means mercenaries, and the small red diamonds would be grunts in terms of activation order. So, cover fire, we see if no allies are present, discard and draw again. In this case, allies are present, and so we just ignore cover fire and proceed. This is a great card for us actually on the beginning of this turn because it means Giggarat is not doing anything this turn. So let's move on to the mercenaries. I mistakenly had two of the Goblin Wreckers one space back, and they should start in this orientation, so I have moved them. For the mercenaries' first turn, I am going to use Maeve, who is here. Let's take a look at her skills. Maeve has the skills Twirling Attack. Attack up to 2 additional adjacent enemies on your next attack this round. That is for a mana cost of 3. Death and Life is her next skill, which allows attack with range +2. On damage, range 8, heal ally for 3 and dispel 1, removing 1 debuff. And lastly, for 2 mana, Zeal, range X, meaning anywhere on the board, no line of sight issues, grant quickness to an ally. At the start of Maeve's turn, where she is mana, she gains 2 mana for a total of 4. For the cost of 2 mana, Maeve is going to trigger Zeal, range X, grant quickness to an ally. Maeve will throw that quickness at Halbjorn and reduce her mana by 2. Maeve still has a movement and attack action. As Maeve still has a move and attack action, I just want to take a look again at the fate card to see what will happen when the grunts activate to determine what best to do with her. So we see Rout, attack closest enemies. If the target is in the leader's range, attack has exploit and precision. Those sound bad. She is of the squishier variety, and so if they're going to attack the closest enemy, I don't necessarily want to put her directly in the fray. I think we want to put our tank there, Halbjorn. So I'm going to forgo attacking, but move her slightly closer. She has a speed of 6, and I've moved her 4 spaces orthogonally to there. That is the end of Maeve's turn, so let's put a activation token there so that we do not forget that she has already gone. Let's activate Halbjorn next. He has a speed of 5, but due to quickness, he gets +3 for this activation, giving him 8 total movement. Due to quickness, he has 8 movement to be able to move 6 spaces to get next to the orange Goblin Wrecker. For a free action, let's use his ability, Weapon Switch, to change from his shield in the offhand to the Blacksmith's Hammer, which allows his main hand hammer to have knockback +4. Halbjorn has an attack rate of 3, meaning he gets to roll 3 die in a combat roll. However, let's use the option to drop his attack rate by 1 to add Overpower +3 to this attack. Rolling 2 die, we see that we have a 7 and a 3. 7 is a hit, 3 is not. And so we have 1 successful hit on the Goblin Wrecker for 2 damage, plus 3 from the overpower of the optional attack we used, or the optional ability on his main hand weapon, plus his overpower on his dashboard of +1. So he inflicts 6 total damage. Let's see where he struck. he struck the Goblin Wrecker in the arms. This was not a critical, in which we are a crit on a 10 plus, and so we only affect the arms. Looking at the Goblin Wrecker's arm slot, we see they have a protection of 2. 6 minus 2 is 4 damage that gets through to the Goblin Wrecker. However, the Goblin Wrecker was struck with knockback, moving him back 4 spaces. Moving him straight back 4 spaces, he would come here and then hit the other Goblin Wrecker, and they both suffer 2 true damage as a result of that. So the 6 damage we inflicted minus his 2 protection is 4 damage, plus 2 true damage is a total of 6 to Goblin Wrecker Orange. Inflicting 6 damage drops him from 15 to 9 health as so. And 2 true damage to the Goblin Wrecker in blue as a result of an enemy or an ally being knocked back into him. He has performed a move action and an attack action, but does not have any fury built up to trigger a skill action. But he did successfully hit an enemy, and so he triggers his fury regen and gains 2 fury to end his turn. This is now denoted by a activation token next to Halbjorn. Next, let's take a look at Mary. I really don't like having my units spread so far apart. I'd like to cluster most of them if I can, to be able to focus fire on enemies and get them off the board quickly. So let's look at Mary and activate her next. Currently she is way across the board over here. I'd like to get her closer to Maeve and Halbjorn. At the beginning of her activation, she gets 2 mana, giving her 4 mana. She has a speed of 6, so a movement of 6 on the board. Let's do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Mary has made a move action. She has a attack action and skill action left. Let's use 3 mana to trigger Blink, which allows teleport of 8 spaces regardless of terrain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 puts Mary at a height advantage, giving her +3 range. Looking at her magical weapon, Ring of Fire, we see that it has a range of 3. She hits on a 7+, rolls 3 attack die, and for every successful hit, inflicts 3 damage. She also has Spell Overpower 1, and would cause 1 additional true damage at the end of an attack. As a result of her height advantage, she has 6 range, so we will target the orange Goblin Wrecker 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and he is in our range. Due to the height advantage, he is also in our line of sight. We're able to look over the enemy in front. She hits on a 7+ for accuracy, so let's roll 3 die, and we have a crit of a 10, a 3, and a 4. Now in this case we only have 1 critical hit. However, if the other 2 die added together had have equaled 10 or greater, they would have combined for an additional hit. Drawing from the blood deck, let's see where we hit, and we have body. No, sorry, because it was a critical attack, it automatically targets the enemy's weak spot, in which case it is generally always the head. So we'll take a look at that. And with 1 successful hit and an offense of 3, that is 3 damage, plus Spell Overpower of 1 is 4 damage, plus 2 additional damage due to the critical hit is 6 damage. Looking at the Goblin Wrecker, we see that they have a protection level of 1 on their head, so 6 minus 1 is 5 damage total to the Goblin Wrecker. Subtracting 5 from the Goblin Wrecker puts him at 4 health remaining. Very quickly, quick clarification. On Halbjorn's turn, when he successfully knocked back that Goblin Wrecker, he only had one successful hit, but I neglected to use his combat reroll on the other die to see if I could make it a 7+. So let's do that now. And we also need to move his achievement tracker up one space, as he did successfully knock back an enemy. Rolling to see if he successfully re-rolled, and no, it is a 4, so that changes nothing. But we do remember to move up his displacement expert tracker. He only needs to do that 5 more times. Finally, let's activate our last mercenary, Seren, who is still on the opposite side of the board. Of note, she has range +1 with bows and crossbows, and her elven bow has a range of 4, so she has a total range of 5. Now we know that en route for the grunts, they're going to attack the closest enemies. And if that target is in the leader's range, the attack is going to have exploit and precision. Giggarat has a range of 5, so we want to make sure that we are at least 6 spaces away from him. So let's move Seren closer, but still out of range. In this position, Seren is 6 spaces away from Giggarat, and therefore won't have those debuffs when the grunts activate. As Seren only gains her focus at the end of her activation, we do not have enough power to trigger any of her skills, so we only have that move action as well as an attack action. So let's go ahead and make an attack with her elven bow, which has a range of 5. She gets to roll 3 die, hits on the 7+, and for every hit inflicts 3 damage. Hitting on a 7+, we have an 8 and 5 and a 7, so we have 2 successful hits. Let's draw a blood card and see what happens. And we have head. It is not a critical attack, as we crit on a 10+ with Seren, but we still trigger the weak spot for the goblin sticker and have 6 damage heading its way before any protection. As we said, 2 hits is 3 times 2 is 6 damage. 6 damage minus a head slot protection value of 0 is 6 damage to the goblin sticker. We had targeted the gray goblin sticker and therefore have decreased his health track appropriately. 4 health remains. All in all, I think that was a pretty successful first turn. We inflicted some damage to several goblin grunts. I think they're looking a little disheveled and upset, so let's take a look at the grunt activation. Alright, en route, the grunts will attack the closest enemies, and if the target is in the leader's range, attack has exploit and precision. Exploit means that the attack ignores the mercenary's armor, but not their inherent protection when calculating damage. So if they hit the body slot where we all currently have armor, that will be ignored. And precision allows the activating unit to ignore other units when determining line of sight. So if they normally would have partially or fully obstructed, now they have line of sight. Activating in order from the top of the screen to the bottom right, we will start with the Goblin Wrecker Gray, then Blue, then Orange, then Goblin Sticker, Gray, Blue, Orange, in that order. Targeting the closest enemy, the Gray Goblin Wrecker moves up to be adjacent to Halbjorn, and we see that he has a range of 1 and hits on a 5+, that's his accuracy, and gets to roll 2 combat die. We have a 0, which would be a critical hit if it was the mercenaries, but in this case, grunts and bosses do not have criticals, so that is a hit, and a 7 is also a hit, both greater than 5+. So we have 2 hits that inflict 4 damage. Drawing from the blood deck, let's see where he hits, and in this case he is hitting Halbjorn on the head, where we have no armor. However, currently we have a protection level of 1 where we removed our shield. So 8 minus 1 is 7 damage to Halbjorn. To show that he normally has 2 protection, but with his shield unequipped, he loses 1 of those. And so 8 minus 1 is 7. This leaves Halbjorn with 28 health, down from 35. Next, let's activate the blue wrecker, who's going to go to the closest enemy. In this case, Maeve and Halbjorn are equidistant. He has more health, so I'm going to choose the blue wrecker to go there. Like the last turn, 2 attack die hitting on a 5+. We have an 8 and a 10, 2 successful hits. That is 8 damage heading towards Halbjorn. Let's do a blood card and see where we hit, and we get our first tactics. This automatically would then hit Halbjorn in the head if it wasn't already targeting there, and also inflicts their status knockdown. Here we see that we have proned Halbjorn as he is now knocked down. 8 minus his reduced protection of 1 is 7 damage. We've reduced his health to 21 and added the knockdown status. Things are not looking good for him right now. Let's take the orange wrecker and move him adjacent as well. He will also roll 2 combat die, and he has 1 successful hit with an 8 and a miss with a 3, so only 4 damage heading towards Halbjorn. Reduced by his 1 protection is 3. However, he does suffer 2 true damage as a result of being knocked down, so that is a total of 5 heading his way. Drawing a blood deck card, we see that he is struck in the arms, where he currently does not have any armor regardless, so he is just receiving 5 damage. This leaves him with 16 health at the end of the Goblin Wrecker's turn. Up next we have the Goblin Stickers, so let's refresh that they attack with 3 range. They hit on a 6+, and they get to roll 3 die on their combat roll, 4 damage for every successful hit, and on a successful tactics they inflict bleed. Targeting the closest enemy is Seren, 3 spaces away exactly, so within range, so the Goblin Sticker does not move. Rolling 3 combat die, we have a 7, which is a hit, a 6, which is a hit, and a 3, which is a miss, so that is 8 damage headed Seren's way. Drawing from the blood deck, we have a tactics card, which means this is now directed to Seren's head, where she has no armor, and also inflicts bleed. So 8 minus 1 for base protection value is 7 damage to Seren plus bleed. Of note, I've been neglecting to do my resilience rolls for debuffs like knockdown and bleed, so we'll correct that now. And similarly, need to remember to also use evasion when appropriate with Mary. Attempting to resist bleed with a successful resilience of 8+, we have a 3, so Seren does in fact have bleed. Going back in time to try to retroactively resist that knockdown, we need an 8+ for Halbjorn. And we have a 9. He was not knocked down. This is a huge win for the Mercenaries, and I am so glad that I caught that rules slip. So this means he does not have to waste an action to stand up. He is still standing, and the 2 true damage he received from the orange wrecker was not inflicted. So I will increase his health by 2 to 18. Otherwise, everything remains the same. Now that we're in our groove, the orange sticker is going to attempt to attack Seren as well, being the closest enemy at 5 spaces away. Needs to be within range 3, so we'll move up 2 spaces like so in order to be within range 3. 3 die, and we have a 10, a 7, and a 2. They hit on 6+, so that is 2 hits. That is 8 damage headed towards Seren. Drawing from the blood deck, we have yet again another tactics, and statuses can stack. In this case, that would then mean 7 damage again, like last turn, to Seren, as it is targeting her head, plus an additional bleed. That is a total of 14 damage that Seren received from those 2 stickers' turns, reducing her from 25 to 11 remaining HP. And finally, the blue goblin sticker has 3 enemies equidistant at 6 spaces orthogonally away, with Halbjorn, Maeve, and Mary. And I will therefore choose Maeve, as she has 20 health to Halbjorn's 18, as the target. Rolling 3 combat die, we see that they have a 9, a 3, and a 1. That is only 1 successful hit for 4 damage towards Maeve. Let's draw a blood card, and we see that it is inflicting damage to arms where there is no current armor. Therefore, 4 minus 1 protection is 3 damage to Maeve. But we do see that this inflicts disarm, which is another debuff that we will try to resist. This would not be good for the good guys, as this means that Maeve would not be able to use her main hand weapon until next activation, but she rolls a 10. That is resisted, no disarm. We will reduce her health by 3. Okay, the board has been cleaned up for the beginning of the next round. Just to note, the 2 bleed tokens on Seren. Bleed reads, takes true damage 1, removed when dispelled or healed by 5 or more. Unfortunately, with 2 stacks of bleed, I can only use a travel ration to heal for 5, which would remove one of them, but I'll have to find some other way, I guess, to try to remove the other one. As that is the end of the round, I am moving the Enrage tracker up by 1 on Giggarat. At the end of Seren's activation earlier, she would have gained 3 focus at the end of her turn. However, she was hit by 2 stickers during the grunt activation, and each hit would have reduced her focus by 1, leaving her with 2 going into this next round. Alright, let's see what happens, what's in store for us on this next round. So let's draw from the Fate deck. And we have our first boss card, Giggarat the Unhinged, where he lets loose a mad cackle. If no allies, discard and draw again. He has allies, therefore he again does not take a turn, if I'm reading that correctly. Yes, he does not. He is just standing there, unhinged, cackling, and is reserving himself for later, I guess. So we get to take an activation. That is incredibly fortunate for the mercenaries. Let's go ahead and take our first turn with Maeve. Beginning her activation, Maeve gains 2 mana. She has a speed of 6, movement of 6, so we will trigger that. Moving Maeve 6 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, puts her adjacent to the orange and blue wrecker, who we inflicted damage on last round. Having performed a move action, we're left with attack and skill. At the top of her skill card, we see twirling attack. Attack up to 2 additional adjacent enemies on your next attack this round. Let's spend 3 mana, reducing her to 1, in order to do a twirling attack. Of note, Maeve is unlike the other mercenaries in that she has a crit chance of 9 plus compared to the base 10 plus with everyone else. She's going to roll 3 attack die with an accuracy of hitting on 7 plus for 3 damage per hit. And she has 2 criticals, and the 3 is a miss. So 2 criticals is 6 damage, base damage, plus whatever we may draw from the blood deck. Let's draw a card now, and we get body or legs. But where this is a critical, we actually strike the head, which is always generally the weak spot of the enemy, with 2 additional crit damage, for a total of 8 so far. But because we have 2 criticals, we actually draw a second blood card, also targeting the head, for 1 additional extra damage. So that is a total of 6 damage plus 3 true critical damage. Correction, that is not true damage. That is 9 total damage, 3 from each successful hit. So that's 6 damage, plus the 3 additional for the crits that are targeting the head. As we remember from before, they have an armor or protection value of 1 on the head slot. So that is 9 minus 1 is 8 damage to both the orange and blue wreckers. As we can see, the orange wrecker only has 4 remaining health and will be killed and removed from the board, while the blue wrecker has 13 health remaining and will be reduced to 5 remaining HP. Maeve gets the first goblin kill, so let's go ahead and give her a goblin head. This allows us to move the goblin head contract meter up by 1. So Maeve has now used her skill Twirling Attack, and attacked both goblin wreckers using all 3 of her actions this turn. Let's, however, use her free action to heal an ally anywhere range X on the board for 2. As Seren is at 11 health with 2 bleed tokens currently, let's increase her by 2. As Maeve healed Seren that turn, we will move up her Restoration Expert by 1. Next, let's activate Mary, giving her 2 additional mana at the beginning of her activation. She is flying and has a speed of 6, and therefore can move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to be within range 3 of the Gray Grunt, and also within 2 spaces of Giggarat. Looking at her dashboard, we see that she can make an attack of range 3 with her Ring of Fire, but by spending 3 mana, dropping to 0, she can also trigger a skill, Bolt of Lightning, which is an attack with range plus 2. This puts her in a position where we get to choose if she wants to attack a Giggarat or the Grunt, the Gray Grunt, to the left of Halbjorn, with both attacks, as she will have range 3 and range 5 respectively on the Ring of Fire and the Bolt of Lightning. In the interest of trying to minimize how much pain we're receiving each time the grunts and boss activate, let's try to get some more grunts off the board. Using her basic attack first with the Ring of Fire, she is at a range of 3 from him, and it is range 3 for the Ring of Fire. She gets 3 attack die, hits on a 7+ for 3 damage per hit. She has a critical, a 7, and a 5. That is 2 successful hits for Mary. Drawing from the blood deck, we see that she has successfully hit the body and arms. However, due to the critical, it's actually targeting the head with 2 additional damage. That is a base damage of 6 plus 2 from the crit is 8, plus her spell overpower is 9, minus the 1 protection the wreckers have on their head slot is 8 damage to the Gray Goblin Wrecker. This reduces the Gray Wrecker's health to 7 remaining, with 5 remaining on the Blue Wrecker. So Mary, Glass Cannon Mange with a huge hit, is not done yet. She still has her Bolt of Lightning, in which she gets to attempt that same attack again. Rolling 3 die, hitting on a 7+, Mary has a 8, a 5, and a 9. Her crit is on a 10, so that's no crit, but she does have 2 successful hits. Drawing from the blood deck, we see that she has actually struck the head. That's great. Oh, that would have been amazing if we had have got the crit. Unfortunately, we did not. So that is just 2 successful hits for 6 damage, plus her spell overpower of 1, making that 7, minus 1 damage, or sorry, 1 protection from the armor value of the head, makes that 6 damage total to the Grey Wrecker. This puts the Grey Wrecker at 1 remaining health. This puts us in a pretty good position to try to remove the Grey and Blue Wrecker from the board. Let's go ahead and use Seren next, as the Grey Wrecker is definitely potentially within range with only 1 health left. Let's get him off the board. Upon activation, Seren has 2 bleed tokens and will take 2 damage as a result. This drops her back to 11 HP. However, let's use a free action to eat our rations. This will allow us to heal for 5 and discard. If you recall the rules on the bleed debuff, it can be removed by healing by 5 or more. As we have successfully healed by 5, let's remove one of those tokens. Seren has a speed of 6, so let's move her to be closer to that Wrecker and some of our allies. This position puts her in range 5 from the Grey Goblin Wrecker and also gets her closer to the token over here that we might be able to get to if the opportunity arises to dig up lost ledgers for the contract. I've thought of a different strategy, so I'm actually going to have Seren target the Grey Goblin sticker and try to be a little bit greedy here in terms of what we try to accomplish. So let's attack with Seren to the Grey Goblin sticker, 3 spaces from her. Attack rate of 3, hitting on 7+. We have a 9 and an 8, which is 2 hits. The 2, unfortunately, over here misses. 2 hits times her offense of 3 is 6 damage towards the Grey Goblin sticker. Let's draw that blood card and see what we get. Unfortunately, we've hit the body. No crit, so we will probably be receiving the greatest reduction in protection they have. Fortunately for us, in the body slot, the armor is only 2, so 6 minus 2 is 4. As we can see from earlier, the Grey Goblin sticker only had 4 remaining HP, which I've since removed, as it killed him and removed him from the tracker. As a result, Seren did successfully trigger Deathblow Expert by performing the last hit on the Grey sticker, in moving her up the tracker 1 towards her achievement. This is another grunt killed. That is another goblin head that has successfully rolled. Let's move that up the tracker as well for the contract. Seren now has obtained her first goblin head. And as she did not have enough focus in order to use one of her skill actions, she is unfortunately done her turn. However, at the end of her activation, she does gain 3 focus, as you see here, for a total of 5. That ends her turn. Let's move on to Halbjorn, who is the last remaining mercenary. He is currently nearly surrounded with 2 grunts, both of whom are low in remaining HP. The Grey Wrecker with 1 HP and the Blue Wrecker with 5. Halbjorn is currently at 18 health of his total max 35, so let's go ahead and eat those travel rations as a free action. This puts him up to 23 health, and currently he only has 2 banked fury from the following of his first activation of the scenario, and so does not currently have enough skill points or fury points in order to trigger any of his skills. That being said, if you have a skill that requires 0 fury in order to trigger it, that can be done as your attack action. And so let's go ahead and do that for Unbridled Fury, which gives us +3 fury, and Halbjorn gains Alacrity. This puts his fury up to 5, and Alacrity gives him 1 extra attack rate for this turn. Taking another close look at his skill card, we see Whirlwind, attack all adjacent units for 4 fury. He currently has 5, so let's go ahead and trigger that, as we're currently still dual wielding with both of our hammers. This will drop his fury to 1, but allow us to make a whirlwind attack towards both wreckers with both of our hammers, giving us the benefit of knockback damage. Taking a closer look again at his skills, with an attack rate of 3 at base, we have 3 die. However, with Alacrity, we could roll 4 die. Having 4 die with Alacrity, let's then trigger the option on the Runed Battle Hammer to attack with rate -1, giving us 3 die total for an extra overpower +3 on the attack. Rolling 3 die, we have a 1, a 6, and a 0, which is a critical. I'll move out so you can see that. Now, unfortunately, 2 of those die do not result in hits, which need to be 7 or greater. However, Halbjorn does have a combat reroll, so let's go ahead and take that 1 and roll it again. And we have a 5, which is another miss. However, the 5 and the 6 added together are 11, and if you have any 2 die that are 10 or greater when added together, that correlates into another hit. So we have 2 hits, 1 being a critical. Let's go ahead and draw from the blood deck, and we get head. However, the critical was going to head towards the head anyways, and we get 1 additional damage for that. So we have 2 hits with an offense of 2 for Halbjorn, which is 4 damage, plus 1 extra damage from the critical is 5, plus his overpower of 1 is 6 damage, as a result of this going to both the gray wrecker and the blue wrecker. Furthermore, because he's using his blacksmith hammer, both would get knocked back 4 spaces and have 2 additional true damage from knockback. Quick correction on the rules there. That would not be 2 additional true damage from knockback. Knockback only leads to true damage if the unit that's moved back hits another unit or obstructing terrain, causing slam. Slam is what inflicts the true damage. The first knockback Halbjorn did at the beginning of the first round, where he struck the orange one into the blue wrecker, both received slam damage. In this instance, neither of the wreckers would receive slam damage. They would just be knocked back. So let's go ahead and do that. Here we have both wreckers knocked back 4 spaces as a result of his 2 successful hits, one of them being critical. 2 hits times 2 offense is 4 damage, plus 1 from the critical is 5 damage, plus his overpower is 6 damage. However, if you recall, we did trigger the option of attack rate -1 and overpower +3, so that would actually be 9 damage headed towards the goblin wreckers, minus their armor value of 1 on the head, which is their weak spot. In this case, both receive 8 damage. Looking at their health bar, we see that the Grey Wrecker has 1 HP remaining and the blue has 5 remaining, so both are eliminated and removed from the board. The board has been cleaned up, getting ready for the grunt activation. Halbjorn successfully struck an enemy in melee combat and showed his prowess by eliminating 2 of them from the board. So he gains 2 fury and 2 Goblin Wrecker heads. As 2 Goblin Wreckers were knocked back successfully, those successes stack. This moves his achievement Displacement Expert up by 2. And the Goblin Head Contract up by 2. I forgot to remove the gray sticker, so I've done that now. Alright, nevertheless, the Mercenaries are all still standing. They've taken their turns in round 2, and there are 2 stickers left plus Giggarat. I'm feeling pretty confident here. I think we might need to go try to dig up some loot. Let's go ahead with the grunts and see what happens. Traumatized Assault. Attack the closest enemy with speed +2 and overpower +3. So they have additional movement and they're going to be bypassing our armor and protection. Up first in the turn order, we see there is the blue sticker followed by the orange. The closest enemy to the blue sticker is Mary at 4 spaces away, and with a range of 3, he will need to move. Within range 3, he is now going to target her and roll 3 die due to his attack rate, and on a successful hit of 6+, will inflict 4 damage per hit, plus 3 overpower. A 5, an 8, and a 1. That is 1 successful hit for the blue sticker on Mary. Let's draw a blood card and see where he struck. And he targeted the legs where we have no armor, but with our base protection of 1, that would be 4 damage from that 1 hit, reduced to 3, but he does have that overpower +3 this round. So that is 6 damage to Mary. Let us not forget, however, that Mary has evasion 1, which gives her an evasion chance of 8+ on a d10 roll, and if she achieves that, she's allowed to evade 1 successful hit, so we could potentially mitigate all of this incoming damage. Rolling for an 8+, we have 5. No, she takes that damage to the face. That is 6 damage to Mary, reducing her from 15 to 9 HP. Up next we have the orange goblin sticker, and the closest enemy is Seren, so they will move to be within range 3 and attack. Rolling 3 attack die, hitting on a 6+. We have a 6, a 6, and a 10. That is 3 hits for the goblin sticker. Let's draw the blood deck and see what happens. And they target the arms where we have no added protection. 3 times a damage of an offense of 4 is 12, minus 1 is 11 damage to Seren. Unlike Mary, Seren does not have evasion and cannot roll to attempt to evade one of those expensive hits. With 16 health remaining, minus 11, that will leave her with 5 health left, knocking on death's door. Not good for the good guys. As that is the end of the grunt activation and the round, let's move up that enrage tracker. Entering the 3rd round, we have Halbjorn at 23 health, Mary at a measly 9, Seren at 5, not looking good, and Maeve at 17. I'll be honest, the punch that sticker just delivered makes me nervous. If they can achieve that, what will Giggarat do if he finally triggers an activation for himself? Find out. Let's draw from the Fate deck, and we have Goblin sticker in the first one to activate is Giggarat with rapid fire. Range X. Attack each enemy with attack rate +2. That does not sound good for us. As he hasn't activated yet, we've all forgotten his stats. He has a range of 5, hits on a 5+, remember that is a typo, and rolls 4 die. And in this case, because of rapid fire, he's rolling 6 die, and on each hit on a 5+, inflicts 4 damage. Wow, I think the tides are going to quickly turn here. Let's see what happens. Okay, let's see how this goes. So Giggarat is going to be rolling with an attack rate +2, which adds 2 die to his base 4, so 6 die. Let's target Mary first, hitting on a 5+. I only have 4d10, so let's see the first 4. We have a 6, a 2, a 7, and a 5. That is 3 hits. Let's roll 2 more die. We have a 6 and a 3, so 4 hits total. Drawing from the blood deck, we see that Giggarat targets the hand for Mary, minus her protection of 1 would be 16 damage. 4 times 4 minus 1 is 15. She only has 9 health remaining. Let's use her evasion roll for fun to see if she can drop one of those hits. And she evades on an 8+ and gets an 8. However, that's only dropping her from 15 to 11 total damage. With 9 remaining health, this means she would be incapacitated and therefore at 0 HP. However, as she is currently above 3 health, she can roll and use her cheat death stat of 8+. Recall that cheat death, if a mercenary has 3 or more health before they're incapacitated, they can roll using cheat death, and if successful, will remain standing with 1 HP left. If they were to be incapacitated again at less than 3 HP, they would then not be able to roll cheat death again. Let's see if Mary is tremendously lucky again and roll 8. Look at that. Wow, she cheats death. It was looking like a foregone conclusion. However, she pulls the luck out of her back pocket and she will cheat death. What would have killed her instead will leave her standing with 1 HP. Had she been incapacitated, she would have then drawn an injury card. Okay, moving counterclockwise, let's go from Mary to Seren. Maeve. Maeve has 17 remaining health. Let's hope we don't get another big attack like that. New target, new roll. Let's go with 4 die to start. Hitting on a 5+, we have a 1, a 4, and a 3. Those are 3 misses, but we do have a 9. That was a good start for us. Let's hope these last 2 are also below 5. And we have a 1 and a 1. Only 1 hit from Giggarat on Maeve. This is massive for us. That could have been expensive. Drawing from the blood deck then to see what happens. Giggarat is targeting the body. That is even better for us. 1 hit with an offensive 4 is 4 damage minus an armor value. Minus an armor value of 1 because body is the target, and protection, only 2 damage is going to get through as a result of those 2 adding to 2. Maeve fortunate in that she only loses 2 health. Targeting Halbjorn next. Let's go again. Same rules apply. New target, new roll. We have a 5, an 8, a 6, and a 10. That is 4 massive hits from Giggarat on Halbjorn. Rolling 2 additional die. Not looking good. We have a 6 and a 3. That is 5 hits. Let's draw from the blood deck then and see what happens. We have the legs. 5 hits at 4 offense is 20 damage to Halbjorn. Normally it would be -2 from his protection and nothing from the legs. However, he's not currently wearing his shield, so this is only 1. As a result, he is receiving 19 damage, and he currently only has 23 HP, leaving Halbjorn with 4 health remaining. Finally, he turns his unhinged gaze on Seren over by the ruined building to the northeast. Let's go ahead and roll 4 die. We have an 8, a 7, a 4, and an 8. That is 3 successful hits. Let's go ahead and roll 2 more to see what else he may do. A 5 and a 6. That is again 5 hits. Drawing from the blood deck, we see that he targets the body, and so in this instance 5 times 4 is 20 minus a protection and armor value of 2 is 18 damage. However, Seren only has 15 health remaining and therefore would be otherwise incapacitated. Seren does have cheat death on 8+, so we'll go ahead and roll that now and see if she's fortunate. Rolling for cheat death on an 8+. Yeah, Seren is successful. So Seren is reduced to 1 HP like Mary and is still standing. Correction, I had been looking at Maeve's dashboard, not Seren. So Maeve has 15 remaining health. She was not the target of that attack. However, Seren only has 5 remaining HP from earlier on and is still above the health minimum of 3 in order to roll cheat death. And she similarly cheats death on an 8+. So she successfully does cheat death but only has 1 remaining HP. Okay, so I think my opportunity to go digging for lost ledgers is far gone at this point. So I'm going to focus on trying to pack a punch to Giggarat and get his health down, otherwise we're not going to walk away from this, I feel. So I'm going to activate Seren first, as she has 1 health, and see if we can get her in a better spot. Correction, I'm not going to do that because she still has bleed and she would instantly die. So I will instead use Maeve first, and as a initial free action for Maeve, range X, I'm going to heal an ally for 2. Now that free action again is denoted on the bottom of her character portrait card, as you can see there. Seren is now at 3 health from that heal, which allows her to take an action this turn without dying. With that free action out of the way and the beginning of our activation, let's gain 2 mana to a total of 3 for Maeve. Now, as you can see, the 2 grunts and Giggarat are not positioned in such a fashion that Maeve can move up and use twirling attack to hit 2 adjacent enemies. So instead, I will use her speed of 6 to move 3 and be directly in front of Giggarat. Actually, correction, I changed my mind. I am going to move directly behind Giggarat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to be in his rear arc. I'm then going to trigger Death and Life by spending 3 mana, and this allows me to attack with range +2, which I don't need on this particular turn. On damage, range 8, heal an ally for 3 or dispel 1. I would love to dispel that bleed, however, I really want the health instead. So after this attack, I will heal Seren for 3, putting her up to 6. Let's drop that mana. With that done, let's go ahead and make that attack on Giggarat. We have an attack rate of 3, so 3 die, hitting on a 7+, critting on a 9+. And we have a 8, a 2, and a 2, so that is unfortunately only 1 hit on Giggarat for 3 damage, We have no modifiers. So that is a bit of a whiff for Maeve, but let's go ahead and draw a blood card, and we see that we target the legs. Giggarat has 2 armor on his legs, so 3 minus 2 is 1. There you have it. We finally slapped Giggarat, and back to Maeve, who spent her 3 mana, used a skill, and had a move action. We have an attack action left, so let's go ahead and do that with a basic attack to Giggarat. Let's first not forget to heal that ally for 3 from using Death and Life on that last skill. Moving Seren up to 6. Okay, let's go ahead and make that basic attack and hope we don't whiff this time. 3 die hitting on a 7+. We have a remarkable 7, 1, and 3. That is only 1 hit. Drawing a blood card, we see that we have hit the hands or the boots. In both cases, there is 2 armor there, and so we again are only inflicting 1 damage. Putting Giggarat now at 28 HP. As a final free action, we will consume our travel rations for 5 health, putting us back to our max of 20 health for Maeve. Alright, didn't accomplish too much there. This is starting to look dicey, but let's see how this goes. I am going to take Seren next and activate her. You'll see on her skill card that last skill, Suppression for 5 focus, looks really juicy. Attack with AoE and Inflict Exposed, which ignores all armor essentially and protection, essentially making all damage true damage. However, I unfortunately forgot that Seren took a hit from the orange goblin sticker on their last activation. As a result of that, Seren actually only has 4 focus right now, as she dropped by 1 due to that hit. Going back to her skill card, we see Bullseye for 4 and Piercing Arrow for 4. Piercing Arrow, attack a unit in a straight line with AoE. Or Bullseye, attack with Exploit and range -2, then disengage. I think I'm going to trigger Piercing Arrow and move Seren 1, 2 spaces such that she is in a straight line range of both Giggarat and the blue sticker. This will allow me to make a regular attack with an attack rate of 3 die, hitting on 7+, with an offense of 3 for each successful hit that will hit both of them if successful. Let's remember to drop Seren's health by 1 due to bleed. And let's make that Piercing Arrow attack by spending 4 focus and rolling 3 die and hope we hit big here. And we have a 7, and a critical 10. Just move Giggarat so you can see that 7 here next to Maeve. This is absolutely huge. Let's draw that blood card and see what happens. And unfortunately, we only get 1 extra damage from that crit, but we are targeting their heads in both cases. Giggarat has an armor of 1 there, and the stickers have 0. 3 successful hits at 3 offense is 9 damage, plus the 1 extra damage from the crit targeting the head will inflict 9 damage to Giggarat and 10 damage to the goblin sticker, one-shotting him and removing him from the board. Let's go ahead and drop that health by 10 on the blue sticker, which is his max health, and he is removed from the game. We will take a goblin head token for that and give that to Seren. Let's also inflict 9 damage to Giggarat, putting him down to 19 health remaining. We used our focus for that attack, so let's move that to 0, and we get that goblin head. Recall that Seren's achievement is the Death Blow Expert, and if she performs the last hit on an enemy before it dies, then she moves up on that track. Well, she performed the only hit on that goblin sticker, and therefore moves up 1, where he died as a 1 hit. So she gets that achievement, and please forgive my bumbling. The goblin head contract also bumps up to 5. Seren has now made a move action, suffered bleed damage, spent all 4 of her focus to trigger a skill, and has a attack action remaining, so let's go ahead and do that now on Giggarat. Alright, let's go ahead and pray that we have similar success to the last attack, and we have a crit. A 6, which is a miss, and a 3. Unfortunately, the 3 and 6 do not add up to 10, so that is only 1 hit. But it is a critical, inflicting 3 base damage, plus our 2 additional from the crit to the head is a total of 5 to Giggarat, minus his 1 protection or armor value from his helm. So that is 4 additional damage to Giggarat. All right, and there we have Giggarat, 4 less health, now 15 total HP. I'm starting to feel like I might still have this, so we'll see. I really want to get a crit on him and try to get this heirloom, as it seems quite powerful. That is all 3 actions for Seren, and she has no free actions that she can take, but it's the end of her activation, so she gains 3 focus. Okay, here we have 2 mercenaries that have finished their turns, and we are left with Halbjorn and Mary to activate. I'm torn between killing the last goblin sticker so I can have 1 more head to roll on the humanoid loot table if I succeed. However, if I kill him, all grunts are off the table, in which case Giggarat will automatically enrage. If he does that, every time I grab a fate card, if he is the first thing to activate, he gets to take his turn, and while enraged, we then skip the other actions on the fate card turn order, and we draw another fate card immediately, and so there is the risk that he could activate twice in a row. We've only seen 1 turn from him thus far, and he nearly wiped half the party in 1 turn. I think I need to bring his health down further before I attempt to take out the goblin sticker, as much as I don't want the sticker inflicting damage on the next fate card. At this point, I don't think positioning is going to matter a whole heck of a lot, so I'm just going to go ahead and utilize Mary next. On activation, she gains 2 mana, but that is not enough for her to trigger any of her skills, so she is left with a move action and an attack action. She does have travel rations left, so she'll take a free action right now, increasing her health from 1 to 6, and let's go ahead and consider movement and an attack. Let's go ahead and spread out our mercenaries a little bit. I'll move Mary 5 spaces of her 6 speed to be to the left side of Giggarat, within range 3 for her to use her Ring of Fire. Again, she has an attack rate of 3, so 3 die hitting on a 7+. Hopefully she goes with gusto here and inflicts some damage. Let's see, we have a 3, a 4, and a 9. She crits on a 10, so that is a single hit, as the 4 and 3 do not add up to 10. So that is 3 damage plus spell overpower of 1 for 4 damage, directed towards, let's see, Giggarat's body, in which case he has 3 armor, so 4 minus 3 is 1 damage. This puts Giggarat at 14 remaining HP. That was not really the outcome I was hoping for, but let's go ahead and trigger Halbjorn and see what he can muster. Double checking Halbjorn's loadout, we see he's currently still dual wielding his hammers and has 3 fury. So let's go ahead and move him to be adjacent to Giggarat and go all out. We're going to move adjacent and trigger Unbridled Fury for 0, which foregoes our attack action, and we will then use Whirlwind in order to attack all adjacent units. We're only hitting him, unfortunately, but this will give us Alacrity and 1 extra attack rate. And so Halbjorn moves on up and is standing toe-to-toe with Giggarat. He triggers Unbridled Fury and gains 3 fury for a total of 6, plus Alacrity, which gives him attack rate +1, so 4 possible die. Let's go ahead then and spend 4 fury, and in typical warrior, Viking, berserker thematic fashion, he's going to go ahead and Whirlwind with knockback, if successful, throwing Giggarat directly into his ally, Maeve. And to me, that's thematic. He's just so overwhelmed with his fury that he's built up that he could care less about his fellow mercenary at this time, who he may very well inflict damage to. Now remember, Giggarat has quite a bit of armor on particular body slots, so I'm going to go ahead and use the attack rate -1 option on his runed battle hammer to gain overpower +3. So instead of being able to roll 4 die with Alacrity, I'm choosing to roll 3, but I get that overpower bonus. Alright, pray to your favorite pagan gods. Here we go. And we have a 9, a 1, and a 3. We hit on a 7+. That 9 is just a single hit. Let's go ahead and use our combat reroll to reroll the 1 and see if we get something better. And there is the critical we were looking for. 2 successful hits with a crit. Let's draw the blood deck card, and we see that we get 1 additional damage, and now we're targeting the head. 2 successful hits with an offensive 2 is 4 damage, plus the crit there is 5. He also has overpower 1, which makes it 6, and because we did the optional attack rate -1 to get overpower +3, we actually hit Giggarat with 9, as well as successful knockback into Maeve, which causes slam damage for 2, making that 11 damage. As this is a critical, we are targeting Giggarat's head, and as we know from prior attacks, he has 1 armor in that slot, so that is a total then of 10 damage to Giggarat when it's all said and done. Okay, here we have Giggarat down to 4 HP, but all of our mercenaries have activated, and it's the end of our turn. Halbjorn's displacement expert also goes up by 1. Okay, that concludes the mercenary's turn. Now let's look at the grunts. And on grunt activation, there is only the orange sticker left. Fine, I'll do it myself. We see regroup, where he will move 3 speed towards the leader and then heal for 5. He's currently full health, so we don't have to worry about that. He just moves 2 squares closer. So there we have it, and now we're going to prep for the next round. I think I was behind on the Enrage tracker. We've completed 3 rounds. This is the 4th, and so we are on the 4th slot on the Enrage tracker. He will enrage at the 6th round. I'm going to take this opportunity to use Gambit to try to prevent enemy movement and keep them where I want them. Gambit is a once per scenario free movement between rounds that mercenaries can make, and as no one has made a Gambit movement yet, I'm going to do that first with Halbjorn. We see that he has a Gambit speed of 2, so let's go ahead and do that for him now. We're going to move him 2 spaces to the right like this. Seren has a Gambit of 3, so I'm going to move her 2 to there so that she is within her speed distance to get to the Lost Ledger to dig if we're so lucky. I'm going to keep Maeve next to Giggarat and the orange sticker because she has the most health, and hopefully we pull a fate card that triggers the hero that is closest to them. Finally, I don't think there's any point in me moving Mary, so let's just go ahead and draw the next fate card and see what happens. All right, we have Giggarat the Unhinged. Let's take a peek. Showing that card one more time just so it's not blurry. Attack rate -2, so 2 die instead of 4 with overpower +3. I think this is going to be costly for us, but hopefully at least 1 or 2 mercenaries stay standing. We just need to inflict 4 damage to him on our turn in order to come out of this ahead. Okay, working our way left to right across the screen, Giggarat is going to first target Mary. 2 die hitting on a 5+. He has a 3 and a 3, a complete miss, and she stays standing. No need to draw a blood card. That is a fortunate turn of events. Let's go ahead then and have him turn around and shoot Maeve. Same thing, rolling 2 die. Here we go. We have a 5 and a 3. That is 1 hit for 4 damage. Let's draw a blood deck card and see what happens. He gets tactics. So that is 4 damage to the head for Maeve. Plus he inflicts poison, as well as 3 overpower. So that's a total of 7 damage minus her protection, which is 1, is 6 damage and poison. Poison reads, accuracy -1 and speed -1 can only be removed by dispelling. Again, as Maeve has no protection in the head or armor, this is with 7 damage -1 is 6, so she will drop from 20 to 14. We see that Maeve now has poison status next to her on the board, and Giggarat is going to move to attack Halbjorn next. Here we go, 2 die hitting on a 5+. We have a 2 and a 3. That is a complete whiff for Giggarat again. We are getting incredibly fortunate. Let's go ahead then and have him target Seren and see what happens. That is a 6 behind the sticker and a 3. So that is again 4 damage towards Seren. Let's draw a blood deck card and we get the body. So that is 4 damage towards Seren, and as Seren has body armor worth value 1 with her base protection of 1, that's 4 minus 2 is 2 damage. She has 4 remaining health. Correction, 5 remaining health, so she drops to 3 health. Here we see the armor value of 1 and base protection of 1 together is 2 minus the 4 damage received from Giggarat gives 2 damage, dropping her from the 5 to the 3. That concludes Giggarat's turn. He's not yet enraged, so we do not draw another fate deck card, so it does move to the Mercenary's turn at this time. I am very glad we chose not to kill that goblin sticker, or he very well may have activated twice. Moving to the Mercenary's turn, I am going to activate Seren first. Seren does not have enough focus to use any of her skills at this time, so she will instead make a base attack against the goblin sticker, as she's currently within range 5. So he is targetable, and then I'm going to have her attempt to move and dig up one of those lost ledgers we've been staring at this whole time. As she still has the bleed status, we will reduce her health by 1. A basic attack with a rate of 3, hitting on a 7+. We have a 7, 7, and 7. 3 hits from Seren. She has pulled her weight in the second half of this scenario. 3 hits, 3 damage per is 9 damage to the goblin sticker. Let's go ahead and see what we draw, and we draw the legs. The stickers have 1 armor in their leg slot, so that is 9 damage minus 1 is a total of 8, putting that goblin at 2 health left. Let's go ahead and reduce his health to 2. And as we are unable to make a skill action, let's go ahead and make our move action. Moving 5 spaces to be adjacent to the lost ledger. This is a free action to dig it up. We will be successful if we roll a 5+. Let's go ahead and try that now. And we have a 9, so we have successfully dug up 1 ledger. Let's go ahead and move that up the track by 1. Next up, let's activate Maeve with 14 health remaining. She will gain 2 mana. She will also use her free action to heal an ally for 2. Let's go ahead and make that Seren, giving her 4 total. Maeve only has 2 mana, not enough to trigger any of her skills except for Zeal, but I don't really have a need for Zeal in this moment. So I'm going to go ahead and have her move 1 space to her left in order to attack and hopefully kill the goblin sticker. Here we see her move over 1 space, and she will make a basic attack. She has poison, -1 to attack rate and accuracy, so she's only rolling 2 die, hitting on a 6+. Alright, here we go. And we have a 4 and a 1. That is a complete whiff from Maeve, unfortunately. And that will conclude her turn. Now you'll notice that the grunts go after the mercenaries here, and if we don't get rid of that sticker, he will regroup and heal for 7, so let's get rid of him. I'll move Halbjorn up 1 space. And if you recall, the last time he used Whirlwind, it cost 4, dropping him from 6 to 2 Fury. Now, let's forego our regular attack to trigger Unbridled Fury, which will give us 3 Fury and Alacrity. We can then use the skill Whirlwind, as you are allowed to use 2 skills in the same turn if using one that costs 0, to Whirlwind and attack that grunt. In this way, with Alacrity, we can roll 4 attack die, and we only need to inflict 2 damage. In this instance, I really just want to hit him because that would also lead to Slam working away at our achievement and also inflicting 2 damage of true power to Giggarat. So I'm not going to use the optional Ruined Battlehammer attack that adds overpower, and instead keep 4 attack rate instead of 3. So let's go ahead and roll 4 die, hitting on a 7+. We have a 1, a 2, and a 10. So 1 critical and 3 whiffs. Let's go ahead and re-roll that 1 with our combat re-roll. And that gives us a 4 plus a 2, and the 2 that I just knocked over is 8. So that is not another hit. We have 1 critical. let's go ahead and draw from the blood deck, which I just shuffled because we worked our way through the entire pile, and we draw legs, and that gives us 1 additional damage. But because we crit, it's actually targeting the head, and the goblin stickers have no head armor, so that's a total of 3 damage, 2 plus the crit to him, plus slam from the knockback is a total of 5. He has nothing to mitigate that with only 2 health left, so the orange goblin sticker is dead, and Giggarat also takes 2 true damage. Giggarat is now reduced to 2 health, and the goblin sticker is removed. Halbjorn grabs his 3rd goblin head, adds an additional to his displacement expert, leaving him needing only 1 more displacement before he achieves that specialization. And we are now up to 6 goblin heads for our contract. Finally, we're left with Mary, and she is going to be a little greedy, and we'll see if we can pull this off. First, let's gain her 2 mana. We are then going to do a move action, try to get a Lost Ledger. I'm then going to spend 3 of our 4 mana to blink to be within range of Giggarat, enabling us to then make a base attack. With a speed of 6, she moves 4 spaces to be adjacent to the Lost Ledger. I'll move the house so you can see that. She's now going to roll, and on a 5+, we'll successfully dig up the Lost Ledger. And we have a 3, so that is a fail. Let's now spend 3 mana to blink to be within range 3 of Giggarat. So she's back to her starting point. That was wasted effort. This is it. I don't know if our mercenaries can withstand 1 more activation from him, so we have 1 attempt here to bring him down. If not, this could get very dicey. So let's go ahead, rolling with an attack rate of 3, hitting on 7+. We have Mary going for the win. And we have 0 hits. However, 5 and 4 is 9, and 3 is 12. So that makes 1 successful hit for 3 damage, plus spell overpower of 1 is 4 damage. Depending on which slot we target, we may have been successful. Let's draw from the blood deck, and we have legs or hands, and gain offense up. And so in this instance, Giggarat has both 2 armor or 2 armor for legs and hands, which allows 2 damage to go through. Let's see that here. Hands 2, legs 2. That's 2 damage, 2 health remaining. Giggarat has been vanquished. The Unhinged is no longer. That is awesome. I can't believe we pulled that off. Unfortunately, we did not crit when we killed him, so we will not be collecting this valuable heirloom. That is... Oh, that stings. I really, really wanted to grab that, but, you know, beggars can't be choosers. We got 1 Lost Ledger, 6 goblin heads. We've almost unlocked a specialization for our warrior. I think all things considered, we did pretty well. There you have it. Giggarat has been unhinged, and he has been defeated. So here we see in the rulebook that he drops loot and gives us 2 rolls on Giggarat's loot table, which we will do in a moment, and we get 1 roll per killed grunt. And as we have 6 humanoid heads from them, we roll 6 times on the humanoid loot table. Also on page 38, we'll do that. We also gain 20 experience, 10 gold coins, and the temple robes recipe. As well, Giggarat does not reward a goblin head, only grunts do that. Where we did successfully dig up one lost ledger rolling above a 5, we get 2 gold for that. So now we have 20 experience, 12 gold, temple robes, these rolls, and after the battle, roll X times for the remaining tokens, of which there's only one that we didn't attempt to dig. And we have a success on a 10 plus. So let's go ahead and attempt that. 1 and 10. And we have a 9, so close, so we did not get that. We do, however, get to roll on the humanoid and Giggarat loot table. Let's take a look at his loot table. And so we see that we can get resources for crafting like silk, hide, gem, gold coins, iron, a recipe for a talisman, his stinky boots, his lucky left hand, fire arrows, and his bow. Ooh, I would not mind rolling a 10 on him. So let's go ahead and do 2 rolls on the Giggarat table. I'm going to go ahead and roll 2 die together. Here we go. And we have a 6 and a 3. So we have earned ourselves the recipe, ornate talisman, as well as a gem. We also get to make 6 rolls on the humanoid level 1 loot table, where we see magic dust, gold coins 3, copper, wood, leather, leather, copper, wood, leather, and copper. So let's go ahead and roll 4 die and then 2 more and see what we get. Rolling 4 die, we have a 9, 7, 5, and 3, which translates to gold coins 3. So now we're up to 15 gold. We have a 7, which is wood, a 5, which is leather, and a 3, which is wood. And we still have 2 remaining rolls. Let's do that now. A 4 and a 3 on the humanoid table, which is another copper and wood. So we have 3 wood, 1 copper, 1 leather, 20 experience, 15 gold coins, temple robes recipe, and the ornate talisman recipe. Of note, none of our heroes were incapacitated, as we luckily cheated death twice. Had we have done so, we would have injuries right now on 2 of them that would need to be healed back in town. Now, if incapacitated, 0 health remaining, a fellow mercenary can move next to that hero and spend 2 of their 3 actions in order to revive that incapacitated hero. They would gain the injury card and start with 10 health, and all buffs and debuffs would be removed. So just because you're incapacitated when things are looking bleak does not mean the scenario is over. You're just going to suffer with injuries as a result. Okay, at end of battle, go to 1.2 on page 54. Okay, to conclude Giggarat the Unhinged, the goblin leader was surprisingly quick on those stilts of his, cursing us as he sprinted away. He vowed revenge, they always do, but the streets were soon quiet, save for the dying campfire at our feet. Continue to 1.3. The west of Westarch. This is an outro. We were about to leave the town square when a light from inside a nearby building caught our eye. It was the same structure the goblin leader had been propped up against, so it was a strong choice to begin our proper search of Westarch. You wouldn't be able to tell from the ruined entrance, but this was once the sheriff's office, complete with a skinless sheriff nailed to a wall just inside. The stench of rotting flesh was overpowering, and the single lantern swinging gently from the ceiling cast an ever-changing assembly of ominous shadows across the room. Flies and other insects ruled this building more than the goblins ever could. They feasted on the poor sheriff and coveted the solitary light source. The sheriff's papers and other belongings were strewn about the floor, and his oak desk had been repurposed as a butcher's table by Westarch's new hosts. We held our breath and walked towards a doorway on the far side of the office, careful not to slip upon the wide trail of blood that shared our path. As we approached, the sound of whispering and movement made us ever more cautious. Our worries of more goblins were not unfounded. But those that remained were not invaders. In the sheriff's 3 large cells, there were about 3 dozen townsfolk, mostly human, but also a pair of goblins dressed as laborers. A third goblin citizen, the owner of the blood trail, was nailed to the wall opposite the cells, a warning for those contemplating escape. "Are you from the guild?" someone called from the middle cell. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and arms thick with muscle. There was kindness behind the concern in his eyes, anxiety that was well warranted. "Where is my son?" We freed the villagers and consoled Ansel Blythe, the blacksmith, for the loss of his son. The pain on his face was undeniable, but he did not shed a tear. "He was a good lad. He didn't deserve this. None of us did," Blythe said while he rubbed his wrists, which were cut and bruised from the chains we had just freed him from. "That bastard Giggarat will be back. We have to be ready." We spent the next week repairing the only warehouse near the docks that hadn't been razed, clearing out the remnants of its collapsed roof, and fortifying the building's walls and entrances. With danger still looming in and around Westarch, there was no other way to ensure the townsfolk's safety. We spent another week training the civilians in basic defense, arming them with spears and bows and whatever else Blythe could craft from the makeshift forge we built for him. They wouldn't last against a concerted siege, but they would be able to defend the compound while we set our sights on new targets in the region. The townsfolk had some suggestions in that regard. We now unlock the blacksmith, and we turn to the town phase in page 24. As the rulebook is now public on the Gamefound campaign page, I will let you look at the rulebook and skim to page 24 to see how the town phase plays out. Alright, hey you guys, my name's Andrew of Cresthaven Games, and I'm here today to give you some gameplay of Bloodwork by iDemo Games. I'm fortunate enough to have been given a somewhat review copy or prototype copy of the first act of the game, and I must disclose that in no way, shape, or form is this a sponsored video. I have no monetary gain for sharing this with you. I just offered to collaborate, playtest, and provide feedback, and I must admit I'm so glad I did so, as I was pleasantly surprised by Bloodwork. It is crunchy, but pretty freaking great, honestly. I play a lot of narrative campaign games as the primary type of game on my shelves, and I have to confess that I'm not someone who normally considers D&D. I've never actually played it, to be frank, and it really doesn't have the appeal that draws me in, but I was intrigued by Bloodwork because it is something very unique here, blending kind of like 5e D&D with RPG and tabletop board game in a way that makes some of the mechanics from 5e D&D much more approachable to someone like me. Initially, looking at photos of the prototype dashboards for characters on Gamefound and the rulebook, the dashboards look very heavy, crunchy, with all of these stats and other attributes, and it just seemed like it would be a lot of math. But I can tell you from my 3 playthroughs of this game that after the first 20 or 30 minutes reading the rule book whilst manipulating the dashboard and setting up my characters, they actually made playing the game near effortless, and both myself and a friend who played this on our first of 3 sessions found that we were immediately pondering our tactical decisions and not actually pondering rules. The rules were intuitive. The boards made the math effortless. As you will see in this video, I very quickly am calculating damage and often forget to show you the calculation because I'm just chomping at the bit to move on and get to the next step. I really enjoy the grim, dark, grimy fantasy here. This is exactly the kind of world and narrative I want to immerse myself in. I think it will speak to you as well. The narrative is such that it's not sort of fluff like you would get in Gloomhaven, i.e., no narrative, but not 2 hours of a wall of text like Madara. But a very happy medium where you have ample story that is continuous into further scenarios and builds upon itself, but also allows choice to spin off and pursue side quests and one-off, one-shot missions that if you succeed, you may grant yourself or your party a great boon. But if you fail, you may miss out on that opportunity, but still valuable time steering away from the main narrative. There's also this really cool town building aspect where as you progress through the narrative, collect more resources, you eventually can reconstruct buildings or recruit specialists like a farrier or a blacksmith or a leather worker, things of that nature, in order for you to build further accoutrement for your mercenaries, further equipment, weapons, accessories, consumables, etc. Having looked ahead at the items you can craft, the weapons you can obtain, the rare heirlooms you can gain under certain conditions from bosses and elites, I can say that the loot and the upgrades you obtain between scenarios are not trivial. They feel impactful. They make your character feel like you've truly advanced. There are further skills and subspecialization that allows growth within your character and to fit them in different niches that you can play as pre-generated or pre-made mercenaries or build your own. I think iDemo Games has really done something special here that will speak to many people in different ways. I love that they have freaking item sets, like, those sets you pursued playing Diablo that you were super rare, you had to get, and they give you this additional buff. For example, one of the earliest ones that caught my eye for the warrior would be to fully equip copper breastplate, helm, gauntlets, leggings, and with that he would have increased armor, but also +1 to might, which directly affects his health. Another really cool feature is that while some of these mercenaries are more geared towards a support class, you'll see in the video that some of the more support class mercenaries that I played as in this run through were fully capable of also being of the glass cannon variety, and they're not just buffing their fellow mercs, but they're also dropping bombs on the enemies at times. And so it's quite fun, and while I played this solo, didn't miss too many things and was able to catch and correct in a timely fashion so that it was still easy, I would say, easy to moderate to solo this. I think this game will be truly elevated in a 2 to 4 in that range party cooperatively. I think it's just going to be beautiful. iDemo Games is planning to make a optional play style where you can play solo with reduce burden of multi-handing 4 mercenaries, kind of in like how Oathsworn had their mercenaries that you could hire instead of having full control of 4 Oathsworn, which made it far simpler to manage. To me, I didn't find it that heavy to manage 4 mercenaries. I think they all play very differently, but it's intuitive, it's thematic. The numbers are really not that hard. It's very quick at a glance if you couldn't remember. It's near effortless, and it's really fun getting to play all 4 of them. Honestly, my biggest gripe with the prototype was that it actually didn't have any D10 within the set, so I had to go out and buy them, as I don't have any D10 in my household, believe it or not. So that's pretty good, all things considered. So to sum it all up, I cannot really stress enough how we felt that a very complex looking system ran very smoothly and allowed us to immediately ponder tactics over pondering the rules in our first ever play session with my friend Guy. And another high point for iDemo games and Bloodwork is, of course, the art and sculpting from the unreal team of Gustavo and Igor, and let's highlight that now.